Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Polish President Andrzej Duda appointed the new government of Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki today. The Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers were sworn in at an official ceremony at the Presidential Palace in Warsaw this afternoon.
Są, można powiedzieć,
I would like to see all the tasks to be worked on in the next 4 years with at least the same level of efficiency as the government has worked until now. As I said, we have achieved many great successes. Many Polish families feel that they were noticed in society and they were taken care of. Their problems were noticed, their struggle was met with social support. Many people felt that they were noticed and appreciated. Many important things were taken care of. Much crime was stopped. Many good things were fulfilled in our homeland. Not everything came to a positive result. Not everything came to a final conclusion. Mr. Prime Minister, ministers, myself, MPs, senators, nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes. We all take sometimes wrong decisions. The most important thing is that we are honest and say sorry, and we admit we made a mistake, and now we make corrections.
bo wielu z Państwa
Służba Rzeczypospolitej to
Our main goal, our goal of goals, is to make Poland the best country to live in within Europe. A country to which expatriates will return from immigration and where all residents who live here will feel good and be happy here. We all know, Mr. President, as you mentioned, we will spend about 1% of our time in the presence of cameras, microphones and flashlights, but the remaining 99% will be meticulous and hard work with studying documents, taking part in negotiations or diplomatic talks in order to reach the best solution, the best solutions for Poland.
do życia w Europie.
The newly appointed Polish government has had its first meeting this afternoon and the new ministers took over their departments. As expected, the reaction of the opposition was negative and they suggested that the government will be unable to fulfil its pre-election promises.
The new government consists of 20 departments, including 4 new ones, for instance, the Ownership Supervision Department led by Jacek Sasin. The head of the Ministry of Climate Change is Michał Kurtyka. The remaining part of the Ministry of Environment is led by Michał Woś, the youngest minister in the government. Opposition MPs expressed their expectations and wishes.
Spełnianie obietnic.
I hope that this government will fulfill its promises, because we know that anything can happen. For instance, Morawiecki's 5 campaign promises were not fully fulfilled.
Widać, że ta piątka, słynna piątka.
Nowemu rządowi życzę
I hope that the government will take into consideration Antoni Macierewicz's speech. I hope that the government will take care of Poland. I wish that Poland will be a Christian state which gets rid of homosexual propaganda in schools.
większej liczby imigrantów w Europie.
The opposition worries that most of the promises will not be fulfilled.
Taki rząd, który będzie dostrzegał.
I hope that this government will notice the problems of people who live far from Warsaw. I know that Mateusz Morawiecki will be a good prime minister, but I'm worried that he'll have problems with fulfilling his promises.
Że premier
Jan Kantak, a new MP and the former spokesperson of the Ministry of Justice, has many expectations for this department.
Moje życzenia
I wish that the Ministry of Justice to implement many projects, because I know how much work they put into them.
dobry. Wiem, ile trudu i ciężkiego wysiłku było włożone.
There is as yet no head of the Ministry of Sport. It will be led by the Prime Minister of Poland, Mateusz Morawiecki, for the time being.
The Polish oil mining and gas extraction company issued a statement today that said it will withdraw from the long-term gas supply agreement under which Poland buys gas from Russian company Gazprom by the end of 2022, when the agreement expires. According to analysts, this decision will have a significant consequence for the Polish energy market.
The Polish Oil Mining and Gas Extraction SA announced that on November 15, 2019, after obtaining the required corporate approvals, a notice was delivered to PAO Gazprom and OOO Gazprom Export to terminate the contract for the purchase and sale of natural gas on December 31, 2022, which was concluded on September 25, 1996, the YAML contract.
tak naprawdę przed Polską otwiera się perspektywa ewentualnych
The prospect of new talks with the Russians is opening up in the context of concluding a new agreement, perhaps one that is more short-term, on much more favorable market conditions. Let us remember that the current contract is unfortunately unfavorable for our country due to the rules regarding the price clause. Another possible option here is the complete termination of gas supply from Russia to Poland due to the diversification policy pursued by the government in Warsaw and the construction of such infrastructure facilities as the Baltic gas pipeline and the already operational terminal in Świnoujście.
strukturalnych obiektów jak gazociąg Baltic Pipe czy działający już terminal w Świnoujściu.
Following a letter which was sent by Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki to the head of Netflix, Reed Hastings, pointing out a number of historical inaccuracies which appeared in the series The Devil Next Door about a concentration camp guard known as Ivan the Terrible of Treblinka, broadcast by Netflix, the American platform has announced changes to the series. The Polish government had been concerned that a misleading impression of Poland had been given in the series.
We stand by the filmmakers of The Devil Next Door, their research and their work. In order to provide more information to our members about the important issues raised in this documentary and to avoid any misunderstanding, in the coming days we'll be adding text to some of the maps featured in the series. This will make it clearer that the examination and concentration camps in Poland were built and operated by the German Nazi regime who invaded the country and occupied it from 1939 to 1945.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good evening and a better tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. The forecast for tonight calls for a fairly warm evening. We can expect showers in Zielona Góra, Poznań and Szczecin, where the temperatures will vary from 7 to 9 degrees. The rest of the country can expect to see partly cloudy and cloudy skies, and temperatures varying from 7 to 10 degrees. Tomorrow, we can expect to see rain in Szczecin and Wrocław, where the temperatures will reach 8 and 14 degrees. The north and central regions of the country will see cloudy skies and temperatures of 12 to 15 degrees. The rest of the country will see partly cloudy skies and temperatures of 9 to 16 degrees. That is all for now. Please stay with us for Poland Daily Business.
Poland Daily Business edition. 11th November 2019, Rita Cosby received a medal from hands of Polish President Andrzej Duda here in Warsaw, and we'll talk about that right now. Rita, thank you very much for participating in our show.
Well, first off, I was so humbled to receive this, and for me it was a very surreal moment and a really moving moment, because I had thought about the journey, of course, for me, and I thought about my father so much. Hopefully they're smiling from above, and what an incredible experience this whole journey has been. And I looked at the president, and I was so honored to be presented this from, the esteemed President Duda. And I looked at his eyes and I said, I accept this on behalf of my father, Warsaw Upriser Ryszard Kozabucki, and I said, but also on behalf of the children of the uprisers and also all the grandchildren of the uprisers too, and that we always tell the story, that this country never forgets and that the world never forgets of their sacrifice. And so for me, it was a very humbling experience, and to be there with so many great people who've done so much for Poland, and to see all the ministers. And for me, I do what I do because I love Poland, not for rewards. I do it because I love this country and I feel like it's my second homeland. But this is a very special trip and one I will never, ever forget.
Oh, that's great. Rita, please tell us, how did it really happen? How did they tell you that you are about to receive a medal?
Well, and it was interesting because I was in New Britain, Connecticut, with President Duda when he came to visit the United States not too long ago. And we were there together, you know, he did a big presentation to huge, it was thousands of Polonia came out to see him, and they had a mass in the morning and then a big presentation there at the park. It was beautiful in New Britain, Connecticut. And we were all there, and I went over to, of course, say hello to him, as I always do when he's in the States, and came over and gave him a big hug and said hello and how wonderful to see him. And he looked at me and he said, "You're coming on Independence Day this year. You're coming on November 11th. And I looked at him because I had been in Poland in September for the 60 Million Congress in Rzeszów, and also in Warsaw afterwards came. And I thought I had just come to Poland and just almost returned from Poland, you know, very soon before that. And I looked at him and he said, no, you're coming on Independence Day. And when the president of Poland says you must come and you must enjoy the Independence Day with me, I thought, I've never been for Independence Day, how beautiful. And for me, I was just excited just alone at that. And then I was getting a few little inklings that there may be something more than me just coming for Independence Day. But for me alone, just a personal invitation to come and spend Independence Day with President Duda and all these incredible people here in Warsaw was almost enough for me to just come. And then as it got a little closer to the date, and I wasn't sure if I could come or not, they said, no, you have to come. You can't just come for Independence Day, you have to come. You got to make sure. And that's when I thought, maybe there's something more than they want me beyond Independence Day. But it didn't really hit me until I received it actually that morning. I had heard some inclinations and other things, but it really, of course, the reality hit me when I walked into the presidential palace. And I was just excited to be back in this beautiful country. I had never experienced Independence Day alone, and I've seen the images as the world has with this sea of white and red. And for me, that was enough. But then when I walked in and they said, okay, the award recipients, Ms. Cosby, you're standing over here, and then you're going to be over here. And that's when the reality sort of hit me, that I was actually receiving it. And I had, again, inclinations that something special was coming. But for me, just to be in Warsaw every time and to be with the president was special enough. But then to be with all these other incredible people. And the Ulma family, some of the people who are working at the museum there were also honored. And I, fortuitously, interestingly, we had received the Jan Karski Award together. And then to see the representative who was working with the Ulma family also receive it. And some of these other great, incredible people who've done so much for Polonia. I was honored to be in that company and then to have this incredible president who I think has done so much for this country, President Duda, and to see his face and to be amongst these other incredible leaders. I was humbled to be a part of it, and I'm going to cherish this, and that day I will remember for the rest of my life.
And there's another great historical happening that happened on November 11th, namely the United States has included Poland to the visa waiver program, and this is a move in historical meaning, because not only the countries will be partners in the world politics and defense, but also people will have a chance to visit each other, to meet, to talk, to learn about themselves.
Yes, how fitting that the first day for Poland to be included in the visa waiver program is Independence Day appropriately. I thought that was so perfect. And it's something that I've been pushing for a long time. So many other great people, the U.S. Ambassador to Poland, Georgette Mosbacher, LOT Airlines, Rafał Micharski, and so many people there were pushing very, very much. Also the ambassador. I think about Ambassador Wilczek in Washington, the Polish ambassador to Washington, Maciej Golubieski, the New York consul general from Poland. I mean, amazing people, the 60 Million Congress that has done so much. It was really a joint effort by so many people and so many leaders. And I hope I helped in some small way by pushing and pushing and pushing people even in the US government as well and trying to get the attention. But it's a long time coming. And it should have happened many, many years ago, but I'm so happy that President Duda was pushing. Of course, President Trump, very much a huge supporter of the Polish people. It was a great moment. And I also think it's going to open doors. I mean, it will certainly open businesses. There are so many people now from Poland who don't feel like there's this hurdle that they have to overcome. It's a much more fluid situation, much more welcoming situation. And it makes so much sense. Poland and America are the greatest allies together. An incredible time to do business in Poland. Poland is thriving. Poland is booming with business. And it's a great thing for both countries to have this openness. And I also think separate than a business, it's a psychological. Because the fact, when I told Americans that the fact that Germans didn't have to get a visa, who, you know, we in America were at war with, and certainly Poland too, that Germans were allowed to come to America without a visa for so many years, and that Poles did not have that, given to them as an option. That's unbelievable. And Americans couldn't believe it. I said, this is inconceivable. How could this be? Poland, not, open arms coming. This is our great ally, our great military ally, our great economic ally, our great spiritual and mental. I mean, this is just an incredible relationship. And so I know Americans, when I told them that the visa waiver program was happening, even my friends who are not Polish Americans, who are just Americans who love Poland, were cheering just as loudly as I was. Maybe not as loudly, because I was cheering very loudly. But to me, they thought this was the absolute right decision. And I'm so happy it's finally coming. And I think it's absolutely the right move. It should have happened a long time ago. But I think there will be an increased relationship. And it's the right thing. Poles deserve everything that America can give them right now, and a visa waiver is the least we can do for this great country.
Thank you very much, Rita.
Thank you. Love being with you always, always, my friend.
Rita Cosby was a guest of Poland Daily Business, and that was it for tonight's edition.
Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily Business Weather. The forecast for tomorrow will bring showers to Szczecin and Wrocław, where the temperatures will reach 8 and 14 degrees. The north and central regions of the country will see cloudy skies and temperatures of 12 to 15 degrees. The rest of the country will see partly cloudy skies and temperatures of 9 to 16 degrees. In Europe, we can expect showers in Stockholm, Paris, London, and Rome, where the temperatures will vary between 7 to 17 degrees. Berlin will see a high chance of sleet, and Oslo can expect to see snow tomorrow. Lisbon will be the only capital to see clear skies and a high of 14 degrees. The rest of the continent can expect to see partly cloudy and cloudy skies and temperatures of 4 to 22 degrees. That is all for now. Thank you for joining us. I wish you all a very pleasant evening.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and this is Poland Daily Culture. Do you remember the person in your class who knew everything about something? My today's guest is the one. She knows almost everything about art. Justyna Napiórkowska is my today's guest. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
Will you share some knowledge today with Poland Daily Culture?
With pleasure.
But at first, as always, let's start with some shots of the paintings which we're going to talk about. As an artistic director of Katarzyna Napiórkowska Gallery, you are right now preparing an exhibition of Edward Dwórnik, who is one of the most recognizable Polish artist, I think, all over the world. And he has this moment of high popularity of his art right now. And you're going to show and also sell his paintings in your galleries. What is the concept of this exhibit?
Well, the moment in which we are showing this exhibition of Edward Dwórnik is not perfect because we were preparing his exhibition 1 year ago. Unfortunately, the artist passed away last October, and I think that the whole artwork feels somehow the void that he left, because his artistic comment, the comment on his paintings on the contemporary life, was something which was accompanying us for several decades. My mother had the pleasure to start somehow her professional career with the art of Edward Dwórnik. So she was showcasing his first paintings when they were still students. Edward Dwórnik was studying at the Warsaw's Art Academy, and there was a very particular moment in his career. All of a sudden, when he graduated, or was near to the graduation from the Art Academy, so he was becoming a professional academic painter, or painter who had academic studies in his background. He got fascinated by a self-taught artist, by Nikifor, the famous Nikifor Krynicki from the tiny Krynica in southern Poland. Nikifor, who was a real phenomenon on artistic scene, because he was it was not an intellectual painter, it was a spontaneous painter who somehow felt so many, so well the colors, the compositions, and it is quite striking to see a professional painter who had his masters, who had his professors at the Art Academy, obviously also in some ways inspiring him, like Professor Eugeniusz Eibisch, but all of a sudden he cuts those connections. And he follows his fascination for Nikifor. Nikifor, who was known for sitting in the streets of Polish towns and drawing from morning until the evening. Edward Dwórnik at that time started his travels all around Poland with this intention, just to document life. Now, when already art historians start to work on biography of Dwórnik, we know about his letter in which he was asking the dean of the Art Academy for a scholarship, and in his letter he was explaining that he's the only person who is able to document the life which is changing. So he felt some responsibility towards the times which were obviously very difficult and very interesting, and he added his personal comment to those.
And tell us why right now there's this phenomenon and suddenly everyone wants to have a Edward Dwórnik painting at home. Is it like because it brings us a lot of pleasure to be around his paintings? They are usually, maybe I wouldn't say cheerful, but they are soft, they are kind, I would say.
I can't agree, because I suppose that in the curriculum and in the portfolio of Edward Dwórnik there are really very different paintings, and he was able to communicate with various publics. It's also quite unusual to be during several decades in the center of interest of the collectors, as well as collectors from Poland and abroad, and art criticism, which is always looking for something new, something which would overpass the history. And Edward Dwórnik always managed to go ahead, to fight for his ideas and to argument in such a way that he was a style of his own. There are several cycles in his art, so it is also quite difficult to really show the let's see, the panoramic view of his artistic portfolio, of his artworks, of his output that he created, because he was always fueled by some extreme creativity. He really felt that the external world, needed to be documented by Edward Dwórnik. He needed to have his word on it, and his word was always on canvas. I suppose that his art is very important also on the European international art scene, also for his comments on historical events. We saw in the past, and there was it was quite well known that Edward Dwórnik was perceived as an artist who can somehow foresee the future in his paintings, like in the case of State of War in Poland, that appeared on his paintings before it actually happened. So maybe there is something in this empathy of the artists, and also of their political and historical knowledge and conscience, that they should be ahead of the societies, because they can showcase something more, they can spotlight something important, they can capture the important moments before they will actually become important. Edward Dwórnik was just a great artist, and I suppose that he still deserves much more attention that has been given to him, although he is extremely popular. I think if we went just on the streets of Warsaw and we asked about the most important Polish artists, maybe the two names which would be given would be Matejko, maybe Malczewski, and I suppose Dwórnik would be along on this list.
And what kind of paintings are you going to exhibit in your gallery?
It's going to be, I have to say, we are very proud of this exhibition because we really managed to collect paintings from all his careers. So there are drawings from back in the 1960s, the time when he was writing this letter I mentioned. So those which were documenting the life which was disappearing. So we can see Warsaw as it is not anymore on his drawings. We will have drawings and paintings from the famous 1980s series in which he was documenting the solidarity movement. We are also showcasing the most recent paintings, both the abstract paintings as well as the bird's eye view visions of cities in Poland and in Europe, which became the most recognizable part of his output.
For everyone who is a fan of paintings of Edward Dwórnik, it is a must-see exhibit in Katarzyna Napierkowska Gallery. We absolutely recommend it to you. Also, if you just slightly know something about Edward Dwórnik and would like to know more. And thank you for being with us today.
Oglądają Państwo.
Good evening. Welcome to Poland Daily History.
Dziś dla Państwa mój gość.
My guest is Piotr Dmitrowicz.
Ryszard Grabacki, proszę Państwa.
Ladies and gentlemen, on February 6, 1940, Friedrich Papst's plan was published, which assumed a tenfold reduction of the Polish capital, Warsaw. It was a plan to create a province city from our beautiful capital. Warsaw was to become a provincial city, located somewhere in the eastern borders of the Great Reich.
Absolutnie tak.
That's right. It was part of a broader plan, because if we look at this general plan, East, which was the way in which Germany saw the future of Central and Eastern Europe, then in this plan, people living in Polish lands were to be reduced to being cheap labor, later to be dispersed out east. This plan was changing, while cities such as Warsaw were to be reduced to being the headquarters of the German authorities. It is estimated that before the outbreak of war, Warsaw counted about 1,300,000 to 1,400,000 inhabitants. As you said, this plan assumed at various stages a reduction in the number of inhabitants to 100,000, and some even mention a figure of just 40,000. Suffice it to say that one of the elements of this plan was the assumption that only left-bank Warsaw was supposed to exist, and only the Poles were to live on the right side of the Vistula, this cheap labor force supporting this plan. Also, thinking about Warsaw in this way has been functioning from the very beginning.
W ten sposób funkcjonowało.
Dobrze to podkreślasz, bo...
It's good that you emphasize this, because this date is significant. It is only February 6th, 1940, so several months have passed since the September campaign, when the Germans entered Warsaw.
Polskich naukowców, którzy widzieli te plany w roku.
There are such assessments, some made by Polish scientists, who saw these plans in 1940 or even 1939. They were created before the outbreak of World War II. Even then, they were thought through in perspective and in these categories. However, the war only intensified it. Let us remind you that Warsaw has become the seat of only the Warsaw district. Kraków has become the seat of Governor Hans Frank. But since we already mentioned Hans Frank, allow me a short quote from 1943, which says a lot about German thinking at that time. We have one point in this country where all evil comes from. It is Warsaw. If we did not have Warsaw in the general governorship, then we would not have 4/5 of the difficulties that we have to fight right now. Warsaw remains a focal point of confusion which spreads anxiety in this country. He was right to an extent. It actually shows this integral part Warsaw played in the entire system of German occupation. The question is, did Friedrich Pabst start implementing his plan?
No powiem tak.
I will say, fortunately for us, did not quite come to fruition. Let's talk about these ideas. The city was becoming Germanized since 1939. The street names were changed in subsequent years, German districts were created. Interestingly, when these street names were being changed, sabotage counterattacks took place, which aimed at covering these new names. Attempts to remove monuments were also made, but most crazy idea was that the royal castle be completely demolished, as well as the Sigismund III column. In their place, there was to be built a building in which the NSDAP conventions would be held, typical of the Third Reich architecture, a kind of palace really, and a giant monument of Germania, a mythical figure. It was a total erasure of Polish history and our heritage, and in reality it was also architectural leveling. As you said, the tasks set out in the Pabst plan were not undertaken.
Na to oczywiście też wpływała sytuacja wojenna.
Of course, this was also affected by the war situation. Some changes, especially in 1943, when Germany began to lose in the east, and when Warsaw was to play a role as a reloading garrison point, and the like. The funds were needed, and at the time, the Third Reich had other priorities. Yes, they had other priorities. Besides, the originator himself, Friedrich Pabst, was shot quite accidentally in December 1943 as a result of an assassination attempt carried out by the Home Army on one of the Nazi officials, Emil Braun. He did not want to implement these ideas, and the end of the war meant that they were not introduced at all. Let's also remember what happened in the Warsaw Uprising, which is hard to call the implementation of the Pabst plan. But in a way, yes, because in these statements of Hitler from the beginning of the uprising, there is such a note very clearly found there. Hitler said, maybe the timing is not perfect, but in the end we can destroy this city, burn it to the ground. So all the time there was the idea of ruining and building something new. They did destroy, but they didn't end up building anything new. Thank God for that. Piotr Dmitrowicz was my guest. Thank you very much.
Do zobaczenia.
The Holy Cross Mountains of Świętokrzyska province. Something to conjure with. These prehistoric outcroppings date back 500 million years and were once of Himalayan height. Today, the highest point within these hills, and indeed the highest point between southern Poland, the Tatra Mountains, etc., and the Urals, is still the Holy Cross Mountains, and specifically Bald Mountain or Święte Góry. Święte Góra is and was a sacred spot. Today, the hill's summit is crowned with a basilica, which has stood for many centuries. But this is something to think about. A pagan wall, the remnants of a pagan wall, exists, crumbled and forgotten, like something out of a Shelley poem, symbolizing the peoples who once lived and worshipped here in pre-Christian times. There is something about this area. The oldest oak is here, the Bartek oak, 800 years old. This majestic tree is a stone's throw, or a few kilometers drive, if you will, from Hecini Castle. This strong point commanded traffic in the Kielce area for centuries. The bear went over the mountain to see what he could see, and we're going to do the same thing. Join us in the Holy Cross Mountains. I'm Will Richardson, and this is Poland Daily Travel, the show we do for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode from the Holy Cross Mountains. And we're in a little town called Hecini. Hecini is, as you can see, an old market town. If you cast your mind back, go with me to about the year 1300, and you would have seen the beginnings of what would become one of the thriving market towns of Lesser Poland. That's Małopolska, of which the main city is Kraków. Now, we're about 15, 20 kilometers southwest of Kielce, which is the regional center, I suppose you would say, the biggest town in the Holy Cross Mountains, Świętokrzyska Mountains. What's interesting about this town is that it was a thriving center of the metal trade. The metal trade, that's right, and limestone trade during the Middle Ages. That's where the money came from. Had a very large Jewish population that moved in here, and most of them working in that particular trade and making it function. Those materials were then sent all over Europe. So this was a very important area. Świętokrzyska itself is an ancient place. And as you'll see through the next episodes, it's also a very beautiful place. But perhaps the most surprising thing about this area is that between here and going to the Ural Mountains, so that's going from here in south central Poland to the Ural Mountains, about 1,000 and some miles away, there are no higher places than where we are. So as we walk up this mountain, the Świętokrzyska, the Holy Cross Mountains, are the highest area between here and the Ural Mountains. And that lets you know what the massive Central European plain is really like. And that includes Belarus and Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, and then into Russia, all the way to Moscow, and eventually the Ural Mountains of Katerinburg, for example, would be, I suppose, the main city there that you might know. Unless you're a Russian expert, you may be as well. I'm not. Okay, so what we're going to see here is the remnants of the castle. Maybe we'll go inside. We'll certainly get a good look at the grounds from the outside and talk a little bit about that castle and what it meant to this area, because this is an area of castles and palaces, castles that were built by Kazimierz the Great. In previous episodes, we were in Kazimierz on the Vistula River, which is not far from Warsaw, well, 120 kilometers from Warsaw, and that direction from us right now. That was named for King Kazimierz the Great, who built all these castles to protect the southern frontier of Poland from invasion from the south and from the area of the Tatra Mountains and the other mountains in that area. Okay, so we're going to take a walk from the city center here. You can always tell it's the village center. Look, we've got the wishing well behind us. Okay, I don't suppose that's an original well, but it's a nice recreation. And so we're going to take a little walk now. And I know exactly what direction it is, because there's a sign that says Zamek or castle that away. Okay? So come with us. We're going to walk up the hill and talk to you some more after the bumper. It's a nice walk. It's a bit precipitous, as some people would say, but it's going to be a nice view once I get to the top. Yeah. This is the church in Cloister here. Well, I can tell you this, that it's a bit of a walk, but it's worth every step, because it's absolutely beautiful. Here on the left is the church, and I can see still about 200 meters ahead, and pretty steep climb up to the castle, which must have been very impressive at one time, and for quite a few centuries. You see behind the hills, and there's a sort of valley in between these two ridges as we come up. This is it's a wonderful setting. Look, it's mid-October. It's a beautiful day. You couldn't ask, as a traveler, for something more wonderful. And it's quiet. There's not a lot of people around, even the local inhabitants. It's a town of about 5,000 people, but most of them must be wherever they are, working or at home. Kids are in school, of course, because it's mid-October. At any rate, a beautiful day for it. Beautiful day for a walk.